Good morning, everybody. Good morning.
Down now. Again. All right. I'll talk to you later.
Sorry.
Yeah. Right. Are you all here now?
The bag.
No problem. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Good morning, Neil. Good morning. Hey, Neil. Sir, are you here? I'm here. So, I guess to keep on schedule, we should really get rolling. So, one last time, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, you. It's a beautiful day in Halifax. Once again, last year we were here, it was sunny and blue sky, beautiful lake outside. Life is good, except for some traffic on the way to the Chocolate Lake Inn today, is what I've been told. So there are still a few people en route, but and I know it's a big ask to be here for 3 to 5 hours. We were chatting about that today and at the various cities. So again, thank you for taking the time. I know it is a partnership effort between distributor, supplier, et cetera, and this is an investment in us by coming here today. So thanks again for that. We've got some ideas to improve the content for next year. Working through a couple of ideas, we've talked to a couple of distributors with feedback that we've heard, and we've got some ideas for next year. So you might see a little different format, but kind of similar. But maybe the plan is to offer more value for your time, right? That's the plan. And even though supplier presentations are valuable, and that is the core of how we earn our living, we're going to bring in some other tidbits into the morning session is the plan. Many of you, including myself, have been in the industry for a long time, and for the most part, we are passionate about how we earn our living. So it's our third year doing the PME across Canada, with 7 cities, actually 8 cities, Vancouver, Edmonton, Calgary, Saskatoon, Regina, Winnipeg, today Halifax, of course, and we're wrapping up our tour with a partnership event with ASI in Toronto in a month, I think, or so.
6 weeks or so.
6 weeks or so. So yeah, so it's been a great tour, great response, great attendance, so it's been fantastic. So, you may have noticed as well the addition of, or us promoting the fact that we've got a guest speaker this morning, Neil Piitz, virtually through Zoom meetings, and ASI as a collaboration partner to enhance our abilities, reach, and future resources. So, just a couple quick things. Morning sponsors, Debco, Marcel, and Sergio, thank you, sir, for joining and for being part of our tour. Hit Promotional Products City, yay! Techno Sport, Paul, and JF, Carrie, Carl, Steve. So they've been part of the tour for a long time, so that's fantastic. Greg today from Bravo Castelli, a new supplier. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, sir. Michelle Merrifield and Suzanne Lursky from ASI Canada. Actually, a longtime friend and the 7th supplier who is not here now, and she couldn't make it, is Amy from Aerial Premium Supply. So she had some flight challenges and couldn't make it here today. And of course, PRG. So thanks to my lovely wife, who's supposed to be here right now, for all her longer hours preparing to bring this tour together. Thank you, honey. Event signage. So just a quick plug for one of our suppliers, Showdown Displays, for their generous donation of all the PME signage and event products that you'll see around the show today. The format, of course, if you've been here before, which most of you have, if you 7 20-minute supplier presentations. If you're at table 6, you move to table 1. If you're at table 2, to move to table 3. They're all numbered on the signs. And to kick off the morning, I'll just do a quick introduction of Neil. So, and again, following our keynotes speak with Neil, we'll have 6 20 minutes presentations. Everybody should hear a 5-minute warning, and then again at 20 minutes by Michelle. At that time, each distributor group will be asked to move to the next table. Lunch will be served upstairs at 12 sharp. Following that, please remember that we do have about 20 other suppliers that are eager to see the best distributor accounts in Halifax upstairs, and many of them, or most of them, have actually flown to be here today. This room is also available to you. You can use it for as long as you want, to do emails, whatever you want. It's your room. So that's that. So Neil Piitz, here we go. I'm pleased to introduce Neil Piitz for the next 30-minute conversation and potentially 10 minutes of questions and dialogue afterwards. If anyone has any questions, try and think of them through typically we haven't had many questions asked. I mean, it's a competitive environment, but of course, with Halifax being such wonderful, nice people and open, maybe we'll get some more dialogue, but good feedback on the talk. Neil is a friend, industry expert of 30 years. He knows the participants in the room. He is aware, appreciates the opportunity to talk, and respects that many of you have much experience. So as I was saying, industry expert, 30 years, successful in both ownership and management on the distributor side in Canada with ARPG, and for 5 years in the US side, on the supplier side with Alpha Broder. And just to make sure he had all categories covered, he married a fantastic lady named Sally Piitz, formerly a successful multi-line rep. If you know a little bit about Neil, you know he does have much experience, is happy to share his opinions, and is currently consulting with many industry colleagues under his company called Differentiate Consulting, helping distributors, suppliers, and multi-lines alike. Thank you, Neil, for accepting our invitation to join us today. And let's see if this works. There he is. Hello, Neil.
Hello, Neil. Never gets old.
Never gets old. And you were saying you've been hanging out in Halifax.
I've been spending some time there we're working with a number of different clients. It's a beautiful place.
Mm-hmm. Right on. So I'll just rhyme off the questions that we've got down here. So where do you, Mr. Neil, see the industry landscape today?
Well, good morning, everybody. It's really been an interesting start to 2019. I've worked, as you mentioned, with a number of distributors across the country, and it seems that the first quarter got off to a slow start, but it's certainly turned around in the second quarter. So if you're down a little bit, it's not you, it's just what's gone on. I'm not sure how much of it has to do with our friends south of the border and some of the crazy talks with China and just purse strings being grabbed up a little bit. The other thing that I'm seeing more and more of on both distributor and supplier side is consolidation. We've seen it obviously with Ash and Alpha and Trimark and Poly Concepts, and I could go on, Debco Hub, etc. And it's not a bad thing; it's just an ongoing thing. And it seems that excuse me, there seems to be more and more of it from a distributor perspective. And I'm not saying I'm not pro or anti, but it's just something that you're going to see more and more of, and it's something you could consider. The other thing is, excuse me, minimal growth, but what I find is going on is the spend is being recycled, meaning it's not the budgets aren't getting bigger. So if you're growing, you're taking it from somebody. So that is an ongoing challenge for everybody out there.
And in order to take market share from anyone else, mm-hmm. You know, you got to be good at what you do, right? So kind of with which leads into with all the talented people in this room, wondering what you think is growing, how people are growing the most, and why do you think they're growing?
I think the people that are winning, and there are many that are winning, they all have a plan. They talk about creativity, they talk about service, not price and commodity. They present as professional marketing experts as opposed to swag and trinkets and trash. That stigma, I mean, I've always believed if you present or act like a peasant, you'll be treated like one. This professional side is really the differentiator right now of what's making it work for those that are knocking it out of the park. The other thing is there's a sense of urgency. As I said, the spend is not growing, so the requirement to work harder. I always tell this story, and it really sort of resonates with me. When I was running ARPG, we used to have a rule, and the rule for suppliers that wanted to come in was they would reach out and they would say they wanted to come in and present. And I would either allow them or not allow them based on the fact if anybody in the sales team wanted to see them. So there's one particular time we had a multi-line in Toronto, a big player, and he had all the big lines, and he called and I sent it out and nobody wanted to see him, and I called him back, and I'll call him Bob for the sake of this exercise because he's a friend and he's still in the industry. And I said, nobody wants to see you, so unfortunately I can't get you in here. He said to me, Neil, I'm going to get fired. I cannot not get in there. You know, you're the biggest, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I hummed and hawed, and I finally gave him a second chance. Well, sum up the story, 2 weeks later, he came in, and he knocked it out of the park. He was prepared. He wasn't flipping pages and dropping samples. He knew what we were working on. He was ready for it. I was just stunned. And as I walked him to the door, I said to him, where did that come from? And he said to me, he said, well, I knew if I didn't knock it out of the park today, I wouldn't be welcome back. And I looked at him and I said, it's absolutely incredible to me that everybody doesn't take that approach to every call that you go on. And he said, you're right, but we do this over and over. And I think sometimes the reason I tell this story is that we're all guilty of it. We all sometimes go in nonchalant. We may not be prepared. We may not have a sample, etc. And those days are done. If you're not working and thinking of every call when you go in as an opportunity or potentially the last time you'll be in there, if you don't knock it out of the park, you will be the one losing, not winning.
A conversation that's been of interest on the tour is the conversation about online competitors.
Yeah.
So from your experience, is this something we should fear as an industry, or what's your thoughts?
You know, it's an interesting one. And when several months ago, I guess it was, Mark Graham, who's a great speaker, and he got up and he did something. He did a seminar at your place about, you know, selling in a digital era, I think, or whatever the name of it was. And he asked the question out of the get-go, and he said, how many people are terrified of the 4Imprints of the world? And I use them, or e-promos, and there's several others. And probably 3/4 of the group raised their hand, and I was absolutely stunned by it. And the reason I was stunned by it was I don't fear them at all. And I know that's easy to say because I'm sitting here and I'm not out in the field every day like most of you are. But I can tell you firsthand, when I was Senior Vice President at Ash City US, I called on 4Imprint and I called on e-promos. And I know more about it, and it's really this simple. Let me just give you a basic background. You hear it all the time. Well, my customer says, and I'll speak about apparel because obviously that was something that I was involved with. So when I would go into a 4Imprint in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and our distributors would say to me, oh my God, Neil, they're selling it below my cost, or they're selling it at my cost. Okay, here's how this works. There's a sliding scale, and the sliding scale is very simple. At 500 or 700 units, they are down to minimal margin, but their average orders is typically somewhere around 17 units. At 17 units, their margins are upwards of 40%. So the person that says that their customer is telling them that they're selling at cost, more often than not, hasn't had the wherewithal to ask the end user, how many are you buying? How are you decorating it? That's the first stage. So it's a bit of a smoke and mirrors approach, and they're doing nothing wrong. They're not giving the stuff away. It's profitable business. The other side of it is, quite frankly, if you ever ask your customer about how they sample, they're limited on decoration abilities. It's heat seal or it's embroidery. There's no laser engraving or laser imprinting. There's so many other options that are available. So quite honestly, if you're losing to them, I think we have to look in the mirror and own some of that, because they're selling this stuff out of a boiler room in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, and if they're beating your customers in Halifax, well, maybe we need to take responsibility for it. So I don't think it's easy, but I do think it's certainly something with work that you can certainly take them on.
And I remember you shared an idea about packaging. I mean, that's an upsell or something that they may not necessarily.
I mean, again, you know, from a you know, I always say if you sell out of a catalog, it's easy. It just doesn't pay that well. I never sold a golf shirt, and I'm going to use brand name, an Adidas, a Nike, etc. Let's say above $50 without a gift box. And people say, how do you do that? Well, typically when people are buying high-end golf shirts, they're small quantities. So let's say 50 pieces or less. And I say typically, it's not always the case. We never put anything out without a gift box. And when that arrived, the customer said, well, I didn't order that. I said, you didn't pay for it either. I incorporated that into my costing, and I had more referrals from people because of it that says, oh, when I buy from ARPG, look how my golf shirts arrive. This is the type of thing that's a step over and above that differentiates us all from each other. And you know what? It may not be the easiest thing, but I can assure you from a reference or referral program and or margin, nobody questions it, and you are truly treated like a professional.
We hear, definitely not from all, but it appears to be getting harder and harder to get actual FaceTime appointments. Can you comment or share some approaches that you've either used or learned from working with other distributors?
You know, I hear it all the time. And again, I'm probably going to not make any friends when I make this comment. There's a real difference between a professional presentation and a professional visitor. And unfortunately, and I've seen it on both sides of the fence, where people come in, there's no purpose, there's no value, they just do a drop in. There's nothing special or unique or creative about their opportunities. The people that are truly doing the homework, doing the legwork, understanding the customer's need. And I always tell the story about going into a doctor and, you know, you say to the doctor, I need a prescription. And he says, here you go. And then I get home and he's giving me something for a bad shoulder when in fact I have a bad knee. I think the preparation for each, it's not a matter of how many appointments you have, it's the quality of them and how well prepared you are. In today's world, people don't have a lot of time. And if you consistently show up with very little to offer, that's why you're having problem getting appointments. Those people, I don't expect people to see me on a daily basis, but when they do, it's a benefit to both of us. And more often than not, they will see you.
True enough. I've heard you talk about the two worst words in our industry that both start with the letter P. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, my two favorite words that are probably abused more than anything that start with P. The first one would be program. Everybody and their brother says they need a program. Everybody and their brother wants to sell a program, and most people don't understand what a program is. If somebody buys items 3 times a year, the same item, it's not a program, it's a reoccurring order. Are the suppliers in the room are probably shaking their heads because they hear it every day. I want program pricing, I want this and that. As on both sides of it, I've looked at it. You really can qualify a program, and I think that's important, and we'll talk about that, because a program is not for everybody. In fact, it's for very few that can support it. And the other one is partnership. And I think that this group today being in this room have sort of demonstrated they understand partnership. Typically what's been going on in our industry is dictatorship. The distributors think that they own the supply chain and that the world revolves around them. I give you this, bad news, it's not true. The suppliers have a lot of input. They have a lot of input on who wins big deals. They have a lot of input on HR, which I get asked every day. Where I can find good salespeople. The reality is nobody, from a sales perspective, generally makes a move from one distributor to the other without checking with the supply chain. So if you're a distributor who's not paying their bills or thinks that their go-to-market strategy is beat up our suppliers, that doesn't play well when you're looking for a reference or a referral for a salesperson that may potentially move to your company. So partnership is what it's all about. I was blessed and lucky enough to win Distributor of the Year nationally for a number of years. And it wasn't, everyone always talked about the fact that, oh, because of your numbers. It wasn't because of our numbers. It was the way we did conflict resolution. Everybody's going to have a problem. It's how you deal with it. And I have sat there, and again, sitting in the Ash City side of things, and guys that wanted to rant and rave and yell and scream and tear up our customer service people. Don't let it happen. It's a reflection on you. If your people are doing it, it starts at the top.
So partnership, programs and partnership. Many in the room today, that kind of leads on to the next question, are working in the program world or being pushed to get into it. So as someone who has pioneered in online stores, can you share wins, losses, or mistakes? I like the comment that you make that most of what you've learned is from things you've screwed up. Right?
Oh, I'm an expert at screwing up. I had a guy that worked for me, and he was awesome. I could name him Joe, and he said to me, "I can't believe you get paid to go out and tell people how dumb you are." And I said, "Yeah, that's really awesome." And it is true. We got into the program business, and we had some of the big BMO, RBC, and I could go down the list. And I can tell you some of the mistakes, if we weren't so successful, we would have gone broke. And I say that because when it comes to programs, there's, and there's big programs and there's small programs, and they vary. But I think that the key thing about a program is caution and protection. The first thing I've always learned about programs specifically is RFPs have a tendency to be overstated and exaggerated. They typically will tell you it's $1 million business, and rarely is it $1 million business. In fact, what I've often done is built in a sort of a safeguard that says to, I'll use Neil as an example, Mr. Neil, you know, if it's $1 million program, I am so happy to give you that website. I'm so happy to give you that inventory. I'm so happy to give you that bilingual operator. No, all the things you want. However, if it doesn't, my costs are about $10,000 to set it up. And in saying that, if you do half of the amount you say, 500 in this case, then you're going to get a bill for 50%. I'm going to prorate all my costs. You should be okay with that, right? And at that stage, Neil typically says, oh, well, maybe we don't do $1 million. Maybe it's more like 500,000 or 275, at which stage you can skew your costs and your inventory, because the biggest thing with programs that kills everybody is inventory ownership. If you can't get a customer to commit an allowance or a guaranteed buyback, or who says they have no skin in the game, this is a customer that I typically try to run away from. The other huge thing in programs that really, really is getting worse and worse is the person or the RFPs that come out and say, you can have the program, we're going to award the program, but we're not going to award the custom business. If you're not getting the custom business as well, let somebody else do the program. Programs typically don't make a lot of money. What they do is they lock you in with your customer. And if you're not, and if the customer, the end user is not prepared to give you both sides of the business, don't take it. You will inevitably be on the bad end of that. And then the other, probably the last thing on that is, every single customer seems to think that their employees are going, they love the company so much that they're going to buy their stuff at their expense and put it on their backs or heads. The reality is it doesn't work. Employee stores typically are a bust. I've worked with some of the best brands. I work with NASCAR, I work with TSN, and I say the best brands, the coolest brands that we see, you know, that we all like to wear, and from a corporate perspective. And the store did great when people were giving stuff away, but the reality was when the employees had to physically go into their jeans and go it, they weren't buying it. Nobody was buying dad or mom a jacket for Mother's Day with TSN or NASCAR on it when they had to part with the money. So those are some of the biggest things with programs. And I think the one I like to use the most as it relates to programs is bookings. Bookings is basically a pilot project for any program. If somebody's never had a program and has no sales history and demands a program, take them down the road of a booking program to see what the support is. At that stage of the game, and I'm sure everybody understands how that works, you accumulate the orders. If you get 20 pieces, you get 20 pieces, not buy and build it and hope they come. You know, when they come, you can build it. So I use booking programs a lot as a test to make sure that there's enough support, because if there's not a quarterback, as I refer to it, on the other end and has no skin in the game, inevitably these things will fail. Programs have broke more promotional companies than any other reason in this industry.
And any tricks on, I mean, I know the opportunity buy or the special order part of a program. How do you kind of somewhat guarantee you're going to get that business?
Well, I think the first thing is that the word exclusive is right there with unicorn. It doesn't exist. You know, oh, you're my exclusive vendor, et cetera, et cetera. That typically is a nice pipe dream. So again, if you can catch a unicorn, let me know. The reality and a trick I used to do with a major financial institution is that I would ask them to provide me with what they called renegade spend or leakage reports, which showed that spend that was going outside of me. And they, of course, asked me why would they want to do that. So what I did in that particular case was I said I would make a 2% donation to their charity of choice. And most large industry companies have some kind of a presence, if you will, in the charity world. They provided me with, you know, Neil Myhan wasn't buying from you, he was buying from ABC Company, and we were able to target a marketing or a call-out program to target those accounts and bring it in. But it's a great way to do it, to work with them, to reach out, and because it maximizes their efficiency and growth and protects their brand. But you can get most of it, you're never going to get all of it.
Did you share that idea? I had to walk outside to do something, but did you share the idea of the charity? Was that one of the things? Nice.
Yeah.
That was a good idea. Offshore buying. So this is kind of one of the last, I think this is the last question. So offshore buying, sensitive topic, something that's prevalent more now than ever before. And I personally have noticed suppliers doing a much better job of it, making it easier. So kind of, you know, what's your thoughts? Whose job is it really?
You know, it's probably one of the most sensitive topics out there because I hear it every day from suppliers who are telling me, explain this to me, Neil. How is it that I'm supposed to carry inventory and provide 24, 48, or 100 pieces at a time on demand in 48 hours for these distributors who, as soon as they get an order that is valuable, they go offshore and bypass me altogether? And I, again, go back to that word partnership. It's absolutely, it drives me crazy. I can tell you with my hand on a Bible and all the dollars and all the value we sold as a company, I never once bypassed and went direct to Asia. People will tell you, well, you know what, the suppliers aren't competitive. And my answer is, you know what, they should be more competitive. They're going to have to be if they're going to continue, because if not, they will be bypassed. But I would also caution you, and again, I speak about apparel a lot because of my background. The difference between what you bring it in for and what you actually have a cost of is significant. So let me walk you through a little scenario. When I was at Ash City, we'd go to the US and we'd walk into a big distributor and he'd say, well, Neil, explain this to me. I can get that particular shirt for you're going to sell it to me for $12 and I can buy it for $8. So there's $4, which is pretty good difference between your price and my price. Okay, let me walk you through this game. So you send your money to Asia and you hope and pray that the order arrives. You're out of pocket usually for somewhere around 4 to 5 months. Anybody who's ever done it realizes, and I can tell you firsthand working in Ash City, that we had probably a 20% rejection rate. And this is a company that was pretty good at importing. I think you'd all agree. There was probably 8 different shades of black. So in the variants as far as, you know, sizing, et cetera. So that being said, where you get into the numbers where it gets very interesting. So again, so $12 and $8. Well, that works if you sell all of your product. Well, even at Ash City, we never once sold all of our products. So there's a variance of about 12% of stuff that's going to be, whether it's the smalls or the triple extra larges or the doubles or whatever you're never going to sell. So you take that out of the equation. Now you get a run specifically on a size like a medium, a large. You're out of larges. Well, the rest of the inventory usually goes stagnant because you can't sell anything if you don't have those broken sizes. Try to call Asia and get them to do 100 large in a particular style. They won't do it. So what do? You buy 500. So you've now reinvested again. So the variance between what you really think you made and what you actually made is not what you think it is. It's in most cases, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever because you've got all that money tied up. And then the last thing is, and I think the most important thing is that suppliers have to look at it differently. They have to minimize their margins on their imports a little bit in order to attract them. I worked with a glassware company here in Toronto, and he said, you know, the microbrewery business, we can't get it. Everybody's bypassing, going to Libby Direct, etc. And I said, well, what are your margins? And he told me, and I said, okay, you got to cut your margins. The distributors are complaining that they can't get the business because of it. And by working together collectively or collaboratively, you will get business that has been bypassed to both the distributor and the supplier. But everybody has to work together. This is an industry that's worked successfully for, I don't even know, 100 years. And if we don't start to fall in line and respect one another, it's not something that has a long-term. The suppliers are getting frustrated, and they can't keep getting bypassed. And I don't blame them one bit.
And I mean, I've never been in the clothing side myself, so what I hear more. What's that? Sorry.
I can hook you up.
Is the hard goods side. I think that's what I hear more of is hard goods purchases because it's a little easier, right? You don't have the sizing and stuff like that, but
well, it certainly is from that perspective. But I will tell you this: that some of the decorations, I saw somebody bring in a logo for Air Canada that just they didn't spell Canada correctly. It's not such a great thing. These things happen every day. There's been nightmare stories, without naming names, of $1 million orders that have come in to Toronto that have been rejected. They bypassed CSA approvals. Compliance is a huge issue. The suppliers in that room have spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars working with factories that are compliant, that can deliver you safe goods. That's where the hard goods side of it comes in. And people bypass stuff all the time in order to cut the corners on it. I really think it's a mistake. I think of my supplier as an insurance policy. They know what they're doing far greater than I do, or far better than I do. And as a result, I rely on them, and that's worth something of value to both me and my customer. And for the customer that wants to drive you into the ground, inevitably something will go wrong, and that savings is very rarely going to pay out long term.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I've noticed suppliers doing a better job of marketing their ease of direct import business. So that's coming from this conversation. So again, thank you, Neil, for sharing your insight today. I will ask if anyone has a general question from the wonderful, friendly East Coast. Anybody? Cindy usually has a question.
I'm not from the East Coast.
Oh. Ross is a Ross? No?
Neil, you've got something.
Oh, Sergio's got a question. Oh, there was one over here too.
Quick
Nice,
question for
nice.
Neil. With all the distributors that Neil's been working with, been a common theme that he's noticed that there any pain points that are common amongst all those distributors that he could share with us?
Cool. Yeah. So he's asking. You're working with multiple distributors. We know of many of them. Any pain points that each of them share that you can talk about?
Yeah, I think probably the single biggest one right now from a distributor perspective is compensation programs for sales reps. It's actually quite amazing to me, and needless to say, from a confidentiality perspective, I can't say who, but it's changing. There's more and more people. I mean, the 50-50 comp program is non-existent in most markets anymore. I see a lot of what they call COGS, which is cost of goods sold. So there's surcharges that come back against the docket or the transaction. More and more of the big companies are working on a salary plus bonus program. You know, they're paying somewhere, for argument's sake, and it varies city to city, $40,000, $50,000 to a young person coming up, and they subsequently, if they hit their sales initiatives, give them a bonus, which brings their cost of goods down. So that's probably the single biggest question I get asked all the time about is the compensation. And the second thing, the lack of young people coming into the business.
I was going to say that. I was going to suggest that one maybe. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how great the picture is there, but my hair is definitely gray. So I'm going to assume yours would be.
Yeah.
That being said, I made a comment I was doing one of these speeches at a large distributor in Toronto about the age in the room, and I got a bunch of hoo-ha, and then the distributor turned around and said that their average employee had been with the company 20 years. Well, that answered that. I couldn't find anybody under 35. There are certain companies that have decided that they're going to get young people, but they're not trying to recruit from within the industry. They're getting people, they've budgeted money. It's a learning curve. It's 2 years of losses in order to get them secured and get them up to speed. And you know, they go to the universities and they're going to the job fairs, because I don't know a lot of people that came out of college or university that said, I want to sell pens for a living. Typically people have tried something else before they get to this industry. And as a result, the people that are starting to put the young people in place, they're really making a considered marketing effort as a distributor at the local levels, and understanding that there is a loss that's going to transpire for at least a year before these people start to knock it out of the park.
And you're working, I can think of a couple that you're working with right now that do have a ton of young people in their business, right? So yeah, that's what they're doing.
I think the funniest one was I was talking about my resume one day and I mentioned Ash City, and 3 people at the table said, "Who's Ash City?" I said, "Oh my God, I got to get out of this business." Yeah, there are some, and you know what? They also, a lot of them are focusing on culture. It's a great thing. It's not a buzzword anymore. And talking about it, you see it on Instagram and you see it on Facebook and all these things, and they're doing to ensure that they have an environment that they want to be in. I've always believed that we work in an industry where we sell fun, so we should have fun selling it.
Nice, well said.
I think in the high schools, we should introduce a new course called work ethics. Because most of the kids coming out of high school or university don't know what that is.
Work ethic, the idea of training on work ethic. They definitely have a different perspective on how to get things done.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they still get stuff done. You know what I mean? They just do it differently.
Well, I caught part of that question, and it is a challenge for everybody because everybody that comes out thinks they're worth their weight in gold, and they don't want to put in the equity or the sweat to get where we all have. This is not an easy business. It's everyone who's in that room has had trials and tribulations, and it's never been easy. You work hard, it pays well when you're successful at it, but at the end of the day, it's the investment in the grinding that most of the people in this room, if not all, did, that today's people, younger kids it's so challenging to get them to get in and dig down, and they just want it handed to them. And I have 3 kids and I deal with it every day. So trust me, it's not that I have all the answers. I wish I did.
I have 2 questions actually.
Awesome, perfect.
Firstly, where do you see the trends going? Are we talking tech? Are we talking clothing? And secondly, what are your thoughts on using social media to sell?
I think the trends, if you will, are quality over quantity, and that can be said for any item. People are buying, and again, I don't want to stick on apparel, but people are buying brand, and if it's brand, they're buying the higher quality. I've always been of the belief, and I've done it personally, and I've always said to people, I don't want to sell you another shirt. I want to sell you my favorite shirt. And I always, as a sales tip and a tool, and it's, I always ask the buyer, and I say to them, you know what, when laundry day comes, there's always one shirt. Every man and woman cannot wait to get out of the washer. And they say, yeah. I said, that's the shirt you should be selling. And how many of us are quick to say, when somebody says, I want a $20 polo, getting a $20 polo, when the reality is it's never going to see anything outside of either the back of my closet or the trunk of my car, which I use it when I come out of the car wash to dry my car with. You need to put, and that goes back to the value side of it, in seeing, selling something that is functional and practical. I said to one supplier, going back a little ways, and they said to me, they wanted to we had a nice showroom and they wanted to set it all up. And I asked this particular person, and I said, please don't put anything in my showroom that you don't have in your own house. And she said, I'm going to be here a while. She had to take out a lot of it. So my thought is that, people that want to buy inexpensive stuff typically, and I get in big trouble for this. I go to a golf tournament here, an association golf tournament, and I always struggle with it because they give out goodie bags with stuff that nobody else wants, and because the suppliers are going to give it. And I'm thinking, if that's what we think, and if you don't take that approach when you go into, again, every presentation, thinking along the lines that I want this person to be wearing this when I see them on a weekend. I want this person to be using it in their next business meeting. This is truly the difference, again, going back to who's winning, not selling page 33 because it's there. And as far as social media goes, I think it's important. I personally, I'm not the youngest guy, but I use Instagram. I live on LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. These are things and tools that just keep you front of mind. I know it certainly targets a younger demographic, who the buyers are today. You seem to be able to get them. Video is a great presentation point when somebody won't see you. I've seen people do it a lot lately with today's technology and phones and shooting. I tell you a quick story, and I know this has gone on a little long, but I was in Seattle, and this particular company was going to pitch a professional sports team, and he kept trying and he kept trying, couldn't get it. I walked into his office one day, and every employee in the building had on a helmet and a jersey, and he started, and he's like, got price, check, and he's like a quarterback, and he sent this video out, and within a week, he got a call back, and the guy said, I want to deal with you because nobody's come to me and taken the time and effort to do that. So there's so much. I mean, there's no simple answer, but preparation and knowing your customer and research, and the research that's available is such a great tool as well. I mean, online, I always, you know, we didn't even get time to talk about CRM, but knowing your customers, I have my system, and I know my customer's wife's name or husband's name, their daughter that plays hockey, the dog's name, whatever. I've walked in with large bones and given it to a customer because they're more passionate about their dog than they are about their husband. And and all of a sudden I become, yeah, I know, you know, I become the greatest guy in the world. And it's those little things that make the experience personal. And it's certainly, and it all comes back. We're selling an experience, and it's not a product. So these are the kind of things, and I love telling stories, and probably tell too many bad ones, but people come up, and this is one of my favorites, and then I promise I'll cut it off. I was in Golf Town one day, and I walked up, and this young man came up to me, and he said, "How do you hit the ball from that side?" And I looked at him, and I thought, how does he know what side of the room? And he noticed that I had a tan line. I hit left-handed, and my right hand was very white. My left hand was very tan. I hired that guy the next day. That guy was just sitting there and figuring out me, not about what he could sell me, but figuring me out. And those are the kind of things that, whether it's the online solutions and the difference between price and value, when people have the experience, typically they're with you for the long haul, because I don't believe we're ever going to be replaced by computers.
Right on, Neil. Thank you again for your time. I guess we should.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us for the tour. Well done, well done. So I guess we'll do a 5-minute break for a bathroom, and then we'll get rolling. That's good?
Thank you.
Cool. Neil out.